Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be a video discussing minions and Last Epoch. So, the astute of you will notice that I haven't really played minions since 1.0 dropped, and that was like 7 months ago, or even longer than that, to be honest. And that is a very long time, and that's because I just don't really like minions right now. They are what I would, or like for lack of a better word, I think they are just generally really bad right now for the most part. Like the average floor of a minion build is so down low that it just doesn't feel like it's fun to play. But this video isn't meant for me to complain about minions. This video is meant for me to discuss why minion builds are bad in general. So in the background footage, you'll see Cookbook was nice enough to supply me with a little bit of footage for Last Epoch. This one is going to be a Summon Scorpion Beastmaster. This is actually one of the better minion builds. Summon Scorpion definitely has what it takes to be a good minion build, but most of the other minion builds in the game don't even come close to what this build does in general. So let's talk about why. Well, minions have been stuck in the same kind of state of balance that they've been in since before 1.0. I would say 9.0. They haven't gotten any generic changes. And this has caused a lot of problems in general because the game has been introduced in multiple levels of magnitude of like power creep. So the biggest thing that they've gotten is the large amounts of flat damage that they've got from the affixes on gear and stuff like that. But all that really did was just replace percentage damage. And to benefit from these affixes, you have to run like a staff, and most minion builds aren't going to be running a staff. Like you could run like maybe a one-handed weapon, but you only get like 20 flat. Like they were fine, but they're definitely not what they needed to get going, especially ailment minions, right? But yeah, so they got very small tidbit changes. Now, what does this cause? This has caused them to fall out of favor immensely in general, especially for people who actually push high corruption, like in the end game. They're definitely not necessarily things that you want to be playing right now for a lot of different reasons. So let's get into those. First things off. They change how corruption scales. So if you don't know, then a little number on the right of the screen there, it changes how the game is played immensely now, because bosses have large amounts of damage that they normally did not have. Like bosses have a lot, and I mean a lot of damage now. They will hit you, and they will hit you hard. If you do not have defenses, you will die. And because of this specific problem, right, this has made it so that minions who just stand there and don't have that good of sustain, because, let's be real, they're minions, right? They will easily die. And this has caused many minions that are normally okay, like skeletons and stuff like that, to be very poor. Because it turns out when a boss can kill all 11 of your skeletons immediately, the moment that you start the fight, it gets really annoying after a while, especially resummoning them and stuff like that. And these are just basic abilities that the bosses use, right? So that's caused a lot of issues. Okay, cool. But then there's another aspect that 1.0 bring that made minion builds even worse, and that is favor farming. So if you don't know, minions never had very good clear speed. Like there's been a few that have had decent clear speed. Like for instance, you have like Wraiths, right? And of course, Summon Scorpion has good AoE and stuff like that. But if you're playing like an A-bomb build or like a Golem build or whatever, we've never really had what I would like to call good clear. Like for instance, a build that had a modicum of clear would be like skeleton archers and mages and stuff like that. And that build was okay for clear, but it's definitely not the fastest clear ever. But most builds usually are way worse in terms of that, because a lot of minions are melee minions who have to walk up to things and hit them with melee attacks, and their melee areas aren't really that big either, which causes a lot of problems in endgame as well. So All of that combined meaning that they're not very good at farming favor in general. Like, for instance, the build that Cookbook is playing in the background here is actually one of the better favor farmers for minion builds. But if you compare this to, like, let's say, I don't know, almost any other build in the game that has good clear, it's not going to compete with those in terms of favor farming, because in general, right, builds that have better AoE capabilities where they can actually choose where the AoE goes and stuff like that, they can go faster, they can do more damage and stuff like that, they'll end up having more favor per hour. But the problem is that this is such a huge difference. Now, like I said, you're seeing the best of the best here in the background. This is the best minion build because it has good AoE, good damage, good survivability. It has all of the above. It has everything that you'd want from a build like this, right? Cool. But the problem is, let's compare this to, like, say, I don't know, Summon Skeleton. Summon Skeleton does not have any of this, right? Which causes Summon Skeleton to just not be good at all, because guess what? You need favor per hour to get good gear. And if you don't have a build that can farm favor per hour, that's a very bad thing in general. Like, that's not good. That's not good at all. So that's another thing. Like, let's think about it for a moment, right? Let's think like, let's say melee wraiths, right? Melee wraiths. Like, for instance, I used to really love playing Blood Specters, the little melee wraiths from Sacrifice. Those would not be very good at favor farming either in general, because they are melee minions in a game where you need to be killing monsters per hour now. That's not necessarily good. Now, of course, I actually asked for this change. I wanted it to be more of a clear speed focused meta, but I also, I don't know, wanted the devs to make minions not have negative clear speed as well at the same time. That would probably be very good in general if they didn't have negative clear speed like that. Cool. So that is another reason that are keeping minions down from being very good, right? Now, the last part is the harbingers. So if you don't know, the harbingers came in patch 1.1, and they are essentially uber duper scuba bosses. Like, they are so much harder than the normal bosses in terms of their stats and stuff like that. They do bigger AoEs. They do way more damage with those AoEs. Like, a good example is the Fat Harbinger, right? He has like a lot of slams and things that minions don't just walk out of. So they just die to them. They have large damage over time pools that will cause minions to die. Like, damage over time is a killer for minions right now. Like, you can end up losing your minions very easily thanks to damage over time. Like, remember, like, some of these minions, like companions, if they sit on the ground, like, they'll die, and they'll just sit on the ground until they get revived. And that's very annoying. At least necromancers can resummon their minions, but necromancers also have a very large mana tax to resummon those minions. So all of that combined leads to just minions not being that good. Also, as well, recently there was a huge amount of power creep that was introduced to the game in terms of the factions, right? So not only can you not get the factions as easily, like favor per hour as much, right? Cool. But you also, like, your gear in general is just less valuable than other people's gear. To give you an idea, like, minion percent damage is usually what you're stacking on most gear. Attributes are what you're stacking on most gear, but other builds got a lot more ways to, like, different ways of scaling. Like, for instance, builds that, like, let's say like, I don't know, like Ignite Infernal Shade, right? That's a good build right now with a Warlock. That build, it scales its damage based on its global Ignite chance. So, like, for instance, it gets like 1% more damage per 20 global Ignite chance and stuff like that. Well, if you get like an double exalted pair of, like, a double exalted staff, right, with like Ellie Dot and Ignite chance, that can end up being a very large amount of more damage for your build, right? But minions, they have minion damage percentage and minion health percentage, right? They have these two avenues to scale. They don't have that many avenues to scale, right? So, like, on gear specifically, like, gear got better, but gear doesn't really make minions that much better. Like, a good example here is Cookbook's build, right? Cookbook's build, 99% of his gear is built around keeping him alive as a minion player. Like his Scorpion doesn't need that much gear to do damage and stuff like that. He just literally has focused most of his gear on not dying. And that's just a testament to how minions, they don't scale very well on gear. Like he could go and get more damage on his gear. He could go and like make his Scorpion do a bunch of damage, but it wouldn't really matter because all he cares about is survivability, because the investment of damage he puts in his gear isn't really worth the time and effort here and there, right? So all of this combined, so the bad favor farming in general, remember, I'm talking about average minion builds. There are better minion builds. Like I'm not talking about your Wraith Lords. That's kind of like an outlier. I'm not talking about Summon Scorpion, right? I'm talking about all the other minion builds, just all of them other than like Scorpion and Wraith Lord and stuff like that, right? All these minion builds, they have a problem with farming favor. They have a problem with stat scaling in the late game. They have a problem with high corruption farming, and they have a problem with survivability with the new bosses, okay? All of that combined has led them to just not feeling good right now in general. So cool, all of that. What could they do to fix it? Well, the biggest thing I think that they could do is fix minion survivability. I should not be able to invest so much into my character and my minions, right? I should not be able to give them 900% increased health or 1500% increased health and still have them die to harbinger attacks, okay? Like after a certain point of investment, you should be able to make your minions not die to random boss attacks. Cool, right? Eventually, then I can focus my gear on DPS for my minions. Remember, when I'm playing like a spark charge build, right? I don't have to care about my spark charge's HP. I don't have to care about my spark charge's clear speed. I don't have to care about my spark charge's like attribute stacking because they don't die. They're like, for instance, when I throw out my volcanic orb, I don't have to worry about the volcanic orb taking damage and then dying from the boss, right? But when I'm playing a minion build, I do have to care about these things. And all of this combined just causes so many problems that it just makes minion builds not fun to play, not fun to make videos on. The only thing that minions are good at doing are killing Aberoth. That's the only thing that they're good at. But the problem is killing Aberoth does not give you favor. It just gives you gear, like random gear. And half the things that Aberoth drops is stuff that you don't want as a minion build. Like if you go through and look at all the stuff Aberoth drops, 99% of it is stuff you don't care about, right? So it's like, it's just so not like, it's in a not a very good position in general. Okay. Not in a very good position. They're not good at favor farming. They're not good at surviving. They have very, very bad stat check requirements on gear. Just overall, minions are in a very bad spot. I hope that they eventually rework them. With all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go probably not play a minion build for another 7 months at this point.